I want to tell you about a guy named Frank before we get into anything else, because his story is the reason I'm making this video. Frank retired at 62. He'd worked 38 years at the same manufacturing company in Pennsylvania, paid off his house, had a decent 401k, and the day he hit 62, he called Social Security and signed up, because in his head, that's just what you do when you retire. Fast forward 6 years. Frank's 70 now, his wife Donna is 68, and Frank passes away suddenly from a heart attack. Donna is left with Frank's Social Security check, except it's not his full check, it's the reduced one, the one he locked in at 62. And because Donna's own benefit was smaller than Frank's anyway, she's now living on that same reduced amount for the rest of her life, possibly another 15 or 20 years. Nobody sat Frank down and showed him what that one phone call at 62 would mean for Donna decades later. Nobody told him about the $8,000 he could have been adding to his 401k every year in his late 50s. Nobody mentioned the account sitting in his name that could have grown into a tax-free safety net for exactly the medical bills that piled up in his last few years. Frank didn't do anything wrong exactly, he just didn't know. And that's the scary part, because right now, today, there's a good chance you're sitting on the exact same blind spots Frank had, and you don't even know it yet. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The years between 50 and retirement are the most important financial years of your entire life, and most people coast through them doing exactly what they've always done, when this is actually the window where small decisions create massive differences, the kind of differences that someone you love might be living with long after you're gone. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what those decisions are, how to make them, and why waiting even one more year could cost more than you think. So stick with me, because the third idea on this list is the one almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most valuable one of all. Before we go further, if you're someone who's thinking seriously about the next chapter of your life, or honestly, even if Frank's story just made you a little uneasy, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the like button too. I'm Jack, and on Jack Retires, we break down exactly this kind of stuff every single week. Real numbers, real strategies, no jargon, just the things that actually move the needle for people in their 50s and 60s. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with something the IRS actually wants you to take advantage of, and most people either don't know about it or don't take it seriously enough. It's called a catch-up contribution, and once you hit 50, the rules around your retirement accounts change in your favor. In 2026, if you have a 401k through work, you can put in $24,500 as your regular contribution. But once you turn 50, you're allowed to add another $8,000 on top of that. That's not a typo. 8,000 extra dollars a year just because you crossed that age line. And here's where it gets even more interesting. If you're between 60 and 63 years old, there's something called a super catch-up, and it lets you add up to $11,250 instead of 8,000. Most people in that age bracket have no idea this exists. Think about that for a second. A person who's 61 years old, fully maxing out their 401k with both the regular limit and that super catch-up, could be putting away over $35,000 a year into a tax-advantaged account. That's not pocket change. That's the kind of number that can completely change what your last 5 working years look like for your retirement. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That's great, Jack, but I don't have an extra $8,000 or $11,000 just sitting around. And that's fair. Not everyone does. But here's the thing. You don't need to do it all at once. Even bumping your contribution up by just 2 or 3% of your paycheck, something you barely notice month to month, adds up in a massive way over even 5 or 10 years, especially when you remember this money grows tax deferred the entire time. And if your employer offers any kind of match, and you're not contributing enough to get the full match, that's literally free money you're walking away from every single paycheck. I had a guy reach out to me, I'll call him Dave, 56 years old, working in logistics out in Ohio. He told me he'd been contributing the same 5% to his 401k since he was 32. Never changed it. Once he ran the numbers and bumped it up to capture his full match plus a partial catch up, he was shocked to find out it only cost him about $140 a month in take home pay, but it added almost $9,000 a year to his retirement account. $140 a month. That's less than most people spend on streaming subscriptions and takeout coffee combined. But here's a quick heads up before we move on, because this affects more people than you'd think. If you're a higher earner, say you brought home more than $150,000 last year, there's a new rule starting this year that says your catch-up money has to go into a Roth account instead of the regular one. Now don't worry, that's actually not bad news. It just means you pay the tax now instead of later, and then it grows completely untouched by taxes forever. If that doesn't apply to you, don't worry about it. Just keep that in your back pocket. What matters for everyone, no matter your income, is this next part, because this is where most people make a decision they don't even realize they're making. Now let's talk about something that flies even further under the radar, and this is the one I told you about at the beginning. It's your health savings account, or HSA, and if you have one, you might be using it completely wrong. Most people treat their HSA like a checking account for medical bills. Money goes in, money comes right back out for a doctor's visit or a prescription. But that's not what makes this account powerful. An HSA is the only account in the entire US tax code that gives you a triple tax advantage. The money goes in tax-free, it grows tax-free, and if you use it for qualified medical expenses, it comes out tax-free too. No other account does all three of those things. Not your 401k, not your Roth IRA, nothing. In 2026, if you have individual coverage, you can contribute up to $4,400, and if you have family coverage, that number jumps to $8,750. And once you hit 55, you get an extra $1,000 catch-up on top of that. So here's the strategy that almost nobody uses. Instead of spending out of your HSA every time a medical bill comes in, what if you paid that bill out of pocket, kept the receipt, and let the HSA money sit and grow, invested, just like a retirement account? Here's why that matters so much for someone in their 50s. Remember Frank from the start of this video? In his last 2 years, between hospital visits and prescriptions, his medical bills were brutal, and Donna told me later that money worries on top of everything else made an already hard time even harder. If Frank had spent even 15 years quietly building up an HSA, letting it grow instead of draining it for every little expense, that fund could have absorbed a huge chunk of those bills, completely tax-free, with money left over for Donna. And here's the kicker. Those receipts you saved from years ago, you can actually reimburse yourself for them anytime in the future, even decades later, completely tax-free. So that emergency room visit from 3 years ago that you paid for out of your checking account, you could technically pull that exact amount out of your HSA tax-free right now if you wanted to. All right, let's shift gears, because the next thing we need to talk about is the decision that probably has the biggest dollar impact of anything on this entire list, and it's one that most people make based on a feeling rather than the actual math. I'm talking about when you decide to start taking Social Security, and yes, this is the part of Frank's story I haven't fully explained yet. Now picture this. You're 62 years old, the mailbox has that letter in it, and there's a button you could press today that starts your check coming in immediately. Feels good, right? That's exactly what Frank felt. But here's what that button doesn't tell you. Let's say your check, if you waited until your full retirement age, would be $2,000 a month. Press that button at 62, and instead of $2,000, you're locking in around $1,400 every month for the rest of your life, no takebacks. But if you can hold off all the way to 70, that same check grows to roughly $2,480 a month. Read that again. Same person, same job, same lifetime of work, and depending on one single decision, the difference is over $1,000 a month forever. That's not a typo, and that's not a sales pitch. That's just how the formula works. Now, I want to be really clear here because this isn't a one-size-fits-all answer, and anyone who tells you it is hasn't actually looked at your situation. If you've got health issues that run in your family, or if you genuinely need that income at 62 to cover your bills, claiming early might be exactly the right call for you. There's no point in maximizing a monthly check you might never fully enjoy. But here's the scenario where this decision becomes massively important, and it's the one that played out with Frank and Donna. If you're the higher earner in your household and you pass away before your spouse can actually step into your Social Security benefit amount, whichever is higher between the two of yours. So if you claimed early and locked in a reduced benefit, you're not just reducing your own check, you might be reducing what your spouse lives on for the rest of their life after you're gone, possibly for another 10, 15, 20 years. That's exactly what happened to Donna. Frank's early decision at 62 became Donna's monthly reality at 68, 69, 70, and there was nothing she could do to undo it. That's the kind of decision that almost never gets talked about in those generic 5-minute YouTube explainers about Social Security, and it's exactly why I wanted to bring it up here. Here's something most people never even hear about, and it's only available during a tiny window of time. Let's say you retire at 63. You're not working anymore, so your income drops. But you also haven't started Social Security yet, and you're not old enough yet to be forced to pull money out of your retirement accounts. For a year, maybe two, your income on paper might be lower than it's been since you were in your 20s. Now, here's why that matters. Let's say you've got $300,000 sitting in a traditional retirement account, the kind where you'll owe tax on every dollar you eventually take out. During that low income gap year, you could move a chunk of that money, say $30,000 or $40,000, into a Roth account, pay tax on it now while your income is low, and from that point on, that money grows completely tax-free forever, with no tax bill waiting for you down the road. Most people miss this completely. They retire, and the very next year they flip on Social Security, which fills that low income gap right back up and slams the window shut before they even knew it was open. This one takes a bit of planning with a tax person, but if you've got a big traditional account, this single move, done in the right year, can save you real money for the rest of your life. Let's talk about one more idea. And this one isn't about accounts or government formulas at all. It's about income itself. A lot of people in their 50s picture retirement as a hard stop, working full-time one day, doing nothing the next. But some of the most financially comfortable retirees I've come across didn't do that. They built what's sometimes called an encore career, something part-time, often something they actually enjoy, that brings in even $15,000 or $20,000 a year. Here's why that number matters so much more than people realize. If your investments are earning, say, 6 or 7% a year, having even $15,000 of outside income means you don't have to sell off that much investment money to cover your expenses. And not selling investments during a down year, especially in the first few years of retirement, is enormous, because that's when a market downturn can do the most lasting damage to your portfolio. This is sometimes called sequence of returns risk, and it basically means a bad market in your first couple years of retirement can hurt you far more than the exact same bad market 10 years later. Having a little bit of outside income acts like a buffer. It gives your investments room to breathe and recover, instead of forcing you to sell at the worst possible time. So here's where I want to land this. Frank wasn't careless and he wasn't unlucky. He was just uninformed at exactly the moments it mattered most, and the person who ended up paying for that wasn't even him, it was Donna. None of the ideas we covered today, the catch-up contributions, the HSA strategy, the Social Security timing, the Roth conversion window, or building a little extra income on the side, none of them require you to take on crazy risk or do something complicated overnight. What they require is awareness and a little bit of planning before the decisions get made for you by default. The years after 50 go by faster than people expect, and the choices you make or don't make in this window tend to echo for the next 20 or 30 years, not just for you, but for the people you love. My honest opinion, after looking at situation after situation, is that the biggest risk for most people isn't a market crash or some hidden fee. It's simply drifting, not making an active choice and letting the default option, whatever that happens to be, decide your future for you and for someone else's. If this video gave you something to think about, I'd genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me which one of these hit closest to home, or if Frank's story reminded you of someone in your own life. And if you know someone in their 50s or 60s who could use this, a sibling, a friend, your spouse, go ahead and share this video with them. It might be exactly the nudge they need before it's too late to change course. I'm Jack, this is Jack Retires, and I'll see you in the next one.